Every Doctor Who fan has their perfect idea for the show, and every Doctor Who fan likes to dislike every other Doctor Who fan's perfect idea for the show. So today, we're diving into mine, allowing you all the chance to tell me how wrong I am in the comments below. We won't be looking at actual plots today, but instead, the basics, the bones and DNA of the series, and how I would approach trying to get the show back to being a proper TV event. Starting with number 1, a time jump. There's a lot of talk sometimes amongst fans about whether Doctor Who needs a reset. After being a staple of British entertainment for so long, does it need a clean slate to attract viewers back and bring in a new generation of fans? In my opinion, the answer to that is yes, but it doesn't need to be drastic. It doesn't need to be a complete reboot of the show we all know and love. So, like normal, I'd have my Doctor appear at the end of a Regeneration episode and have a minute or two with them before cutting to the credits. However, when they return for their first full series, it wouldn't pick up immediately from where we left them. Instead, this incarnation has been the Doctor for many years now, perhaps 100 or even 200. They've had adventures, they've had friends, but most importantly, they've moved on and healed from the events of the last 2 seasons. This would allow a complete clean slate without completely disregarding the previous showrunner's work. All that still happened, but it's just not important to the main character anymore. It's a distant memory. Not only this, but it could allow for some really interesting stories, little mysteries of the years we never watched. You wouldn't have to explore any of this if you didn't want to, but if a writer comes up with a great idea, the opportunity would be there for them. Plus, it's a lovely little gift for Big Finish in the future. Now, I know some people would have a problem with this, not being able to see a Doctor find themselves and grow as a person, but you could still do that. People learn and change all throughout their life. You could easily give this Doctor a great character arc without having to follow it from the very beginning. Also, it allows for things to be exactly how you want them at the beginning of your story. Gallifrey can be back in the sky, fully populated if you wanted. How and what the Doctor did to achieve this during the 200 years we haven't witnessed could be the mystery. How far did this incarnation go? What rules of time did they break? How has it affected them up till now? It's all there to play with. I just think this time jump for the character would allow an easy jumping on point for new viewers without upsetting fans who have watched everything that came before. Number 2, no references. To my absolute disdain, nostalgia is currently king when it comes to media. Characters return for the sake of hype over story, references thrown in for no other reason other than to get a polite nod from audience members, and plots rehashed because they once worked before. It's lazy, dull, and I hate it. But another issue that this nostalgia boom has caused, which isn't really spoken about much, is how much it will date this era of media incredibly quickly. We will watch back these shows and films in a few years' time, no longer with the hype from the first watch, and feel the desperation of the creators even more than we do now. Doctor Who has definitely fallen into this trap in recent years, throwing familiar faces on our screens without any real reason or story to explore. It's gone so far into nostalgia that I think the only way to combat it would be to go completely the other way. If it was up to me, references would be thrown in the bin, Easter eggs would be stomped on, and there'd be no little jokes about past adventures only long-term fans will get. Scrap it completely, not forever, but at least for the first few seasons. Because if you're promoting something as a jumping on point for new viewers, you've got to deliver on that promise. You don't want to make your audience feel dumb for not understanding what the hell is going on. And I know some fans would say the legacy of the show is important, and while I do agree it's an amazing thing, I don't think because a show has been running for 60 plus years means you have to constantly pat yourself on the back for the achievement. And after a few seasons, characters could return, but only if a writer actually had a good story that they were dying to tell, and even more importantly, a story the audience would want to see. Because I mean this with no disrespect, but what kid was excited to see Bonnie Langford in Doctor Who? What adult was? Mel has never exactly been a fan favourite character, and each of her recent appearances have been relying on familiarity alone. She's had no story. But we can't just shit on the recent era because Jodie's era suffered with this too, with Captain Jack's return offering little substance. His first appearance in Fugitive of the Jadoon, fucking hell, Fugitive of the Jadoon, is one of the most random moments of the series, where he gives some exposition for a later story that he's not even in. And then in the Dalek episode, he's kinda useless, with the ending just suddenly dropping him so they can focus on Ryan and Graham's exit from the TARDIS. When Sarah Jane returned all the way back in Series 2 School Reunion, there was a reason. This wasn't just a familiar face, instead the story was exploring what happens to companions after the Doctor leaves them. It didn't matter if a viewer had no idea who Sarah Jane was before watching because the story told us. If you had watched her era of the show, it added something to the viewing experience, but it wasn't a necessity and you weren't punished for not having grown up in the 70s. It's that kind of thing that I would allow, but only after a few years of completely fresh storytelling. Now, iconic monsters would be slightly different, and that leads me perfectly into number 3, monsters matter. Yes, it's a cliche on my channel at this point. I love a monster or a fun alien. Sue me, I don't care. They are, in my opinion, the beating heart of the show. Some people will say that Monster of the Week has always had its complainers, but the amount of toys, magazines and fucking bed covers that were sold during the Monsterfield era shows that it worked. Monsters get the viewers. People love a monster and a creature and an alien because they're fun. So of course I would allow iconic foes such as the Daleks and the Cybermen. Not the Master, I'm bored of the sod, but that's a video for another day. However, these returns would be treated as an introduction for new viewers. The main notes for writers would be don't rely on their iconic status, instead recreate it. Make viewers obsessed with them all over again. And this goes for returning fans too. I think the over-reliance of fans knowing these foes is why so many of them have become quite stale. Stories are relying on us knowing they're scary killing machines rather than showing us what they can do. But these episodes, their iconic returns, should always feel like an event, and I'd want to try and go back to that. And when it comes to new aliens and monsters, these should be utilised. I feel a lot of the time the show throws in a villain because it feels like it has to, rather than a writer being excited to try and make the next Daleks or Weeping Angels. And just because there's a monster doesn't mean you can't do great grown-up stories. The Impossible Planet two-parter explores religion and faith, while also featuring the Devil and the Ood, one of the best aliens introduced in that era. I'd want writers to have fun creating wild and weird creatures, and I'd want audiences to know that they're gonna get the monster action they crave. The biggest failure for me as a showrunner would be if someone said the villain was wasted. If a villain is wasted, that script needs a rewrite. Number 4, enjoy the bloody basics. TARDIS introduction split over 2 episodes, regeneration changed and lore being rewritten. I'd stop all of that. Sometimes the basics are a gift to a show and they should never be squandered. It doesn't matter how many times we've seen it, a companion's first time in the TARDIS is always charming and a writer should relish getting to write one. I'd want the show to go back to cherishing its formula. Regeneration doesn't need to be reinvented and moments don't need to be spiced up. Honestly, this is the nostalgia the show should be utilising. Those familiar little beats that still feel new each time they come around. Because when you do try to do something slightly different, it can feel forced. In Space Babies, the episode does all it can to have Ruby not say it's bigger on the inside to the point she starts talking about the jukebox. And I'm sorry, if someone walks into an impossible room, the last thing they're thinking about is the fucking jukebox. Give me the wonder and the magic, indulge in those moments, especially if you're calling it a jumping on point for new viewers. Give them the ultimate TARDIS introduction, let them experience that properly for the first time. Number 5, must watch Christmas. This one is less of a quick fix and relies heavily on the budget, but I'm mentioning it anyway because I can. If it was me, I'd want to make Doctor Who a proper event on Christmas Day again. To do that, I'd try to save some money throughout the season, and it's doable. We don't need big CGI dog or skeleton in a finale, and instead I'd use that money to try get some surprising talent on board for the Xmas episode. A new one-off duo, a famous writer and director, gets to take on the iconic Christmas Day slot. That's how you get your Jack Thornes and Edna Wrights. And listen, I know this is a big city wishlist thing. It wouldn't be easy and would be very expensive, but it's worth a shot. Overall, I think Doctor Who needs to start treating its Xmas special as a bigger event, with or without guest creatives. Doctor Who is a show full of wonder, magic and imagination, and there's no better time to showcase that and celebrate it than on Christmas bloody Day. And there's many other ways I'd go about the show if it was up to me, so if you've enjoyed this video, please let me know in the comments and perhaps I'll do a part 2. Until then, check out my very controversial Series 9 review, and I will once again leave you with one of the best lines in the entire show.
Don't be ridiculous. The biggest danger here is choking on an olive.